Now, before we get to the start of Phase 5, I figured I should join every other person on the internet and force you to listen to my thoughts on Phase 4. I've been using the internet for a while now, and I've seen many tier lists of Phase 4 of the MCU, which by all means is pretty... People have opinions about Phase 4. And I usually don't agree with those opinions. Maybe some people have this one movie at the bottom or this one show at the top, and I just don't agree for the most part, kinda, maybe. I completely expect to get disliked on this video for some thoughts, so just as a reminder, please don't get that mad over fictional characters that don't pay your bills. I still very much so adore and love the MCU, and I've been on this journey way back since 2008 when Iron Man 1 dropped. Or at least I love a majority of the MCU. Some stuff in Phase 4 was kinda hard to get through. My name is Josue, welcome to the Panic Brothers channel, and let's start this pretty controversial ranking of Phase 4, shall we? Oh, and spoilers, obviously. Let's start this list off with what I think is the worst project of Phase 4. Hawkeye. Clint is the one Avenger that I don't care for at all, and here he is. He had an opportunity to change my mind about him. Except the show was barely about him, it was about Kate Bishop. And clearly Kate is meant to take over the Hawkeye mantle down the line, but with none of his experiences or skills, so I found none of the characters likable. The pacing was just way too slow, and I just never bought Kate's relationship with Clint at all. He was a miserable old fart at the beginning of the show, and he's still a miserable old fart at the end of it. Granted, he has some understandable reasons for being grumpy, but still, I just don't want to join him on this adventure of his, if he's gonna be that grumpy. However, this show could have just ranked a little bit higher for me if it wasn't for this one part. There's one part, and it was Kate Bishop somehow being able to take down Kingpin. Kingpin is one of my favorite characters from the Daredevil TV show. And I've literally seen this guy go crazy against some people in that show. I mean, crazy. This dude has absolute just unit strength. It took so much out of Daredevil. Daredevil, an experienced fighter in his own regard, it took so much out of him to take down Kingpin. So how dare the writers of this show somehow make Kate Bishop somehow be able to take him down? This is the worst project in Phase 4. I don't care. Next up is What If. It's sad because for the first ever animated MCU project meant to be filled with a bunch of random and quirky events, it just felt like it never lived up to expectations. We've seen just way too many animated television shows lately that are completely stunning from beginning to end. Arcane, Cyberpunk Edge Runners, hell, even Sonic Prime on Netflix has better animation than this. To think it's a show made by Disney, the king of animation. How could they mess up this bad? Majority of episodes, with the exception of the Doctor Strange Supreme episode, feature storylines that just did nothing to me. Captain Carter was a repeat of the first Captain America film with barely any differences. No one ever wondered what if T'Challa became Star-Lord, and Thor, being an only child, was stupid. What a stupid concept. Other episodes end on a cliffhanger that could have made the episode so much more interesting. Like zombie Thanos picking up the Infinity Gauntlet. I want to see what happens. Fury finding Captain America in a world that's ruled by Loki. I want to see what happens. I guess disappointing is the best word to describe What If. But with the second season coming soon, maybe it has a chance to redeem itself, maybe? Black Widow is next, and I don't know, I guess so far this has to be the one movie this low on this list that people understand why it's this low on this list. Horrible green screen, no one cared because we all knew how Natasha was gonna die. This movie should have came out way earlier. Yeah, like, you know, before the pandemic, I used to watch every MCU project at least 3 times in theaters. Black Widow was the first time I broke that tradition. And then we have Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness. I hate this movie. This movie left me so unbelievably angry. I've been hearing complaints about the MCU for a while now, right? Bad CGI, predictable storytelling, you name it, right? But I always felt like these complaints were overblown a little bit. Until I watched Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Honestly, this could have been even lower with the exception of 2 elements. Scarlet Witch as the villain, and the Illuminati. But not following up on the mortal villainies from the first movie, and the multiverse barely being explored in a movie called The Multiverse of Madness. I mean, I know so many people have said this point already, but it's just aggravating. You know what I mean? It's aggravating. Doctor Strange isn't even the main character in his own movie. He barely has an arc. I don't really like America Chavez. And it has an ending that just doesn't feel like an ending to the movie. It just feels like a tease for the next project, the next phase, the next whatever. There's no actual ending to this movie. This movie felt like it should have been something huge, something that could affect the entirety of the MCU as we know it. Instead, we're just left with this really, really bad movie. Honestly, the more I talk about this movie, the more I feel like it's actually worse than Black Widow, so I'm gonna change it up. It's gonna be Hawkeye worst, What If second worst, Doctor Strange 2 third worst, and Black Widow 4th worst. I really hate what this movie stands for. So the 4 projects that I just talked about were the 4 projects that I actually considered to be really awful. Like some of the worst that the MCU has ever put out. Horrible, just objectively bad. Everything after this, I can at least stand to a degree. Next up is Falcon and the Winter Soldier. This one was hard for me to put this low, but honestly, I had to. The villains were so cringy, so awful. They ruined almost the entire experience. From what I'm aware of, the movie was initially supposed to have a completely different plot line, but due to the pandemic, they had to drastically change everything. I'm not sure if that's really true, but if it is, it really ruined so much of the potential that this series could have had. Which sucks because when it only focuses on Falcon, the Winter Soldier, and even Zemo, there's something really special here. But then it still gets ruined with this really awfully paced last episode. There was that one moment where the Winter Soldier was going to get redeemed, was going to do something, and it just felt so off, so badly paced. I will say though, 2 moments from this series really stand the test of time, really go down as 2 of the best ever MCU scenes, and it's Bucky crying at Wakanda and US agent killing that civilian. Those are 2 just really great scenes. 2 moments of greatness in a sea of just mediocrity. Then Thor: Love and Thunder. Yeah, I know everyone really hates this movie. I get it. I really do. Like, you're right. Thor's character is awful. The CGI is disgusting. The dialogue can be so cringy. But I remember, before I watched the movie, I saw this tweet saying you should go into the movie expecting it to be a comedy film. And it kind of changed everything for me. Like, I legitimately enjoyed the movie despite its flaws because of that tweet. And Jane's subplot with her cancer actually kind of got to me. She was doing everything that she could to fight it. And, kind of deciding to end any chance that she had just to take up the Thor mantle one last time and kind of fight for what's left. I don't know, it gets to me. Like, I actually teared up watching this movie. But Gore was a horrible villain. And this part of the movie actually kind of bothers me. When Gore is talking to that god in the beginning of the film, just notice it. There's fruit on his face, and it keeps changing positions on Gore's face, on Christian Bale's face, every time it cuts back to him. Like, just notice it in the beginning of the movie, it just keeps changing places. And even though I enjoyed this movie, I knew it was going to not be a great movie ever since I saw that moment, that part. Horrible editing. WandaVision is up next. The sitcom element just didn't get to me. I'm sorry. It actually dragged the show down tremendously for me. Not to mention that Ralph Boner thing, which aggravated me. I was so hyped to see Evan Peters in here. I knew what they're trying to do, what they're trying to go for. I was like, oh my God, first time we're getting an X-Men reference, let's go. And then Ralph Boner. One of the biggest wastes of casting and opportunities in the MCU, probably ever. Episode 8 though, legitimately one of the best episodes in television history. I'll give you that. Besides that, though, I don't know what to tell you. I just gotta leave it. WandaVision wasn't bad. It had its moments, but I really don't think it's as good as everyone keeps making it out to be. I remember watching it week by week when it came out, and I didn't feel anything. And then right in the middle is Miss Marvel. This show is so weird to me. As a personal advocate for diversity and inclusion, it's so amazing to see half of this show focus so much in Pakistani culture and Islam. Every scene showcasing Kamala and her group of friends and her family absolutely nailed it for me. Like, I could eat up an entire season of Kamala with her friends and her family. Like, I love that dynamic. It's so good. Then the other half of the show is just awful. Like, the MCU at its worst. The fight scenes in Miss Marvel have to be some of the worst fights I've ever seen in cinema or in television or in any medium of art ever. Like, I don't think I'm exaggerating at all, honestly. I really do think it's just some of the worst choreographed fights ever. And the villains are just really weak. I don't care much about them. There's a lot of promise here, and maybe if the show had more than 6 episodes, we could have really seen something special, but unfortunately, that's a problem with a lot of these Disney Plus shows. They just were way too short and definitely could have and maybe should have been a movie instead. Now we're entering the upper half of this list. And the next project is Eternals. So many tier lists had this at the very bottom, and I don't know why. Like, I know it isn't the best movie in the MCU, but it tried being unique, tried doing something different. I gotta give it a lot of kudos for that. I mean, some members of the Eternals, especially Sprite, were very annoying, but others made up for some really cool and great interactions. I thought the film's reasoning for why the Eternals were missing from a majority of conflicts in the MCU history was pretty stupid, and with how much plot was jam-packed in this movie, this is probably the one movie that honestly should have been a Disney Plus series. Like, how did that happen? But the ending of the movie with Arishem taking Cersei, Phastos, and Kingo with him, as well as the remains of the Tiamat Celestial, leaves me like really incredibly hyped for what's to come. Now we got to Moon Knight. Moon Knight was just solid, man. It was a solid project. Solid TV show. Oscar Isaac was great, the story was great, the lore and the characters were great. I was honestly a big fan of how disconnected it felt from the rest of the MCU. I have so much praise for it, so why is it not higher? Honestly, it's just kind of hard to wrap my head around. When I reflect on Moon Knight, it just didn't really feel like there was much to really take from it. It had one really memorable scene in the first episode of the show, and then after that, it just was there. But I kind of feel like it maybe should have been better off as a movie also, not a TV show, and if it was going to stay as a TV show, it should have been just way longer, maybe exploring some of that mental health issues that this dude was dealing with. It just really goes to show that the pacing is probably the biggest issue with Moon Knight, that just drags it down way too much. And honestly, it's just really evident to be seen in that last episode. Now this is gonna be the most controversial pick in my list. I know it. I know it already. She-Hulk was my 5th favorite project in the MCU. Now, I know no one has She-Hulk this high up, but I really liked She-Hulk. Like, I see the arguments that you guys make for why you hate She-Hulk. I get it, yeah. But honestly, the only complaint that really kind of sticks with my opinion is just the really bad CGI. The CGI was pretty awful in some scenes. Besides that, though, the only other real complaints that I have is that, I don't really care about the side characters, and Daredevil, despite being one of my favorite MCU characters ever, he just felt kind of weird in this. Like, it kind of just didn't feel much like Daredevil, the Daredevil that I know from the series. I don't know. Besides that, though, I really enjoyed this show. This felt like the only TV show that was released in Phase 4 of the MCU that actually felt like a TV show to me. Jennifer Walters has a pretty unique story compared to the rest of the superheroes we've been introduced to in the MCU, in which she was granted superpowers, something that a regular person would kill for, yet she has absolutely zero interest in wanting it or feeling the need to be responsible with it. Her journey in slowly accepting these powers and who she is and how to live with it mirrors Bruce Banner's personal journey, but in such a different way that it kind of captured me the entire time. Plus, you got to follow up on some story threads from both the Incredible Hulk movie and Thor Ragnarok, while also having this finale that utilized breaking the fourth wall in arguably the most creative way I've ever seen in a project like this. Man, this She-Hulk just gripped me from beginning to end. I really can't wait to see more from She-Hulk. I know this opinion is probably shared by barely anyone else, but hey, you were warned in the title of this video that this was gonna be a controversial ranking, so... But thankfully, I think the worst of the controversial picks are behind us. I think I'll be pretty mainstream from now on, I think, maybe. Next up is Loki. I admit I did struggle between picking this or She-Hulk for this spot, but I didn't stay up until 3 a.m. for any episode of She-Hulk. Meanwhile, for Loki, that last episode, I was dying to know whether or not King was going to show up, so I just had to give the edge to Loki. Every week felt like this really big event. Something crazy was happening in every episode, and I just had to give it to Loki. Loki was probably the show that I was least looking forward to, funny enough, and it ended up beating every other show. I don't think I need to say anything more. Y'all know why this show is awesome. My third favorite project is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. The second I saw that bus fight, which was probably a top 5 fight in the entirety of the MCU, I knew I was in for a good time. It's a great movie from beginning to end, and the only real complaint that I have is, I don't know, Simu Liu's acting, I guess? Maybe the costume design? I mean, the costume design wasn't that great, so yeah. But even then, I don't care enough. I had a movie where Shang-Chi was doing some crazy hand movements with some dragons circling around him. Like, nothing else in the MCU comes close to giving me something like that. That's awesome. Shang-Chi, third best project in the MCU Phase 4. This next part was really hard for me since I actually considered these next two projects to be two of the top 5 best projects in the entirety of the MCU, which honestly, that is probably more controversial than maybe anything else I said. But I had to give second place to Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. This film was it, man. From the beginning of the movie, I knew I was in for such a special, unique time. Like, the tone was carried consistently through all of it. And I hate to be that guy, but Namor did something for me as a Latino, man. He did something for me. Like, not only was he a near perfect villain, but for what he stood for Latino culture, I mean, god damn. I literally bought a Namor Funko Pop because of how much I love this guy. Shuri's journey throughout the entirety of the film made complete sense, and I loved her as Black Panther. Angela Bassett is literally nominated for an Oscar because of her performance for this movie. Like, she killed it. And the music. Are you kidding me? Alone, Burna Boy, Con la Brisa, Budakish. They wanted but no. The interlude. Are you kidding? The movie is phenomenal. Phenomenal. This is a goddamn movie. I was crying like crazy the entire time. I think the only complaint that I have, and it's not really a complaint, was kind of how they revealed T'Challa's son at the very end. I wasn't crazy about that, but this is a 9.9 movie for me. I mean, 9.9 out of 10. This is good stuff. Which leaves the one and only Spider-Man No Way Home as my favorite MCU Phase 4 project. I mean, come on, what else was it gonna be? Was this really a surprise? Like, the movie was an experience in the movie theater. Beginning to end, I cried like crazy. My entire theater went off for the Daredevil cameo, for the Andrew Garfield cameo, for the Tobey Maguire cameo. Just everything about this movie was just everything I could ever possibly want from a Spider-Man movie. I really don't think there's anything else I could say about this movie that a million other YouTubers probably haven't done already. So just know that this is my favorite Spider-Man movie, my favorite MCU movie, and just one of my favorite movies of all time in general. Anyways, if you managed to get to the very end of this video and listen to all my thoughts, then I appreciate you. Thank you so much for listening to this 26-year-old man ramble about superheroes that don't pay my taxes. I'd love to have the comments for this video be a safe space for anybody who has different opinions about projects of the MCU Phase 4 that other people don't necessarily have. I really would love to know what you think. Phase 4 was definitely one of the weirdest phases, weirdest times for the MCU, and everyone's gonna have different thoughts and opinions on what just happened. So anyways, here's to Phase 5. Can't wait for Ant-Man 3. Do all the regular YouTube stuff, like, subscribe. Please stay tuned. I have all the projects in the works on things related to gaming, related to anime, related to just all things nerdy. Till then, my name is Josue. I'll catch y'all later.